Hello and welcome to another week of Western Perspective. Well, it was a historic moment for WA when the National Party overtook the Liberal Party for the first time and became Labor's main opposition in Parliament following Mark McGowan's landslide election victory. Now with a new mandate as the state's new opposition leader, Mia Davies faces an uphill battle as Labor dominates both lower and upper houses. We spoke with Ms Davies as the new parliamentary term begins about her plans to hold the government to account for young people.
Yep. Mia Davies, thanks for your time and congratulations on your appointment. As leader of the National Party, your challenge is second to none now. You newly appointed the opposition leader, and with a very small presence in the lower of the House, how can you hold the government accountable?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of ways that we can do that, but you're right, there's no doubting that there's a significant majority held by the McGowan Labor government as a result of the recent election. I think back to the last 4 years that we were in opposition and some of the issues that we dealt with, things like School of the Air, the gold royalty tax, the closure of Moira Residential College. Those issues didn't require a vote on the floor of Parliament. It required us to use the Parliament to bring those issues to light and to support the community. And we'll be doing exactly that. On issues that are important to our communities across Western Australia, we'll be standing shoulder to shoulder using the Parliament as a platform. We've got shadow portfolio holders, we've formed an alliance with the Liberal Party, and we're determined to work together to make sure that we can do the job that the West Australian public expects of us.
Traditionally, the Nationals have been a very regional-focused party. Are you planning on splitting the responsibility for discussing Perth region's issues with the Liberals, or will you be taking that on?
We've formed an alliance, so the Liberal Party and the National Party have formed an alliance to work together as an opposition. We've allocated shadow portfolio responsibilities. That means that we have responsibilities right across the state. So if you're the shadow for housing, you'll be dealing with issues in Halls Creek as much as you will in the outer suburbs of Perth. And my expectation is that our team will work together to make sure that we bring all of those issues that need the advice and the attention and the response to of the government, that they are being dealt with.
For young voters in WA, what's your plan to give youth a voice in Parliament and on government policy?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because I was, in my 30s when I was elected, and certainly not the youngest, but I was the youngest in the Legislative Council at the time. It's really important that we have a diversity of decision makers in the Parliament, and from a party perspective, we've always been very supportive of encouraging younger people to be involved in our decision-making roles. I think the issues that we hear from younger people include job security, accommodation, affordable accommodation, and the ability to complete their education wherever they live in Western Australia. It's about issues of equity, certainly a significant concern around environment, and we'll be making sure that as we move forward over the next 4 years, that those voices are heard as we develop policy and respond to the matters that the government believes are its priorities.
On the issues of COVID business compensation, should more be given to businesses that have suffered through COVID lockdowns? The CCIWA says that the $2,000 really isn't going to cover average losses.
We think there definitely needs to be more done to compensate the businesses that were impacted as a result of the snap lockdown in over Anzac Day. And as we move forward, if this is to be the way that we continue to manage the COVID pandemic and community outbreak, we need to see support for tourism businesses, certainly events, and our business community to give them some confidence to continue to employ people and to provide the support that they need to in our community's economy.
The next 4 years are going to provide many challenges to the National Party. What are your priorities as opposition leader going to be during this time?
One priority is to make sure that the National and Liberal Alliance can do its job effectively in opposition, to make sure that when we get to the 2025 state election, we've got a good suite of policies. The people of Western Australia know that we've been focused on their needs for 4 years and have held the government to account for their decisions. I'll always be the leader of the Nationals. I'm that first and foremost, and the position of our party in making sure that there's equity in decision making and investment right across the state will remain a priority. So there are a number of issues that are immediately in our focus. That's about holding the government to account as we manage the COVID-19 pandemic. There's obviously a housing crisis in Western Australia, whether you live in the metropolitan area or the regions. And we've got a system in our hospital and health system that's in crisis, and this government seems to be denying. And so in the short term, there's some focus for the opposition. In the long term, we'll be working with stakeholders to develop policy that means that we are focused on the needs and wants of regional and metropolitan Perth West Australians.
Your father was a Nationals MP. To know that you've done this, and he would have been really proud?
Dad was one of my greatest supporters, and I've got no doubt that he'd be incredibly proud to see where we are. And if he was with us, I've no doubt he'd be getting stuck into making sure that we could provide the best opposition for the next 4 years possible.
And now, here's this week's COVID-19 commentary with AMAWA President Dr. Andrew Miller.
It's been a busy week again, COVID-wise in Australia, at which I think we found the limits of the community's tolerance for locking out our own citizens, fortunately. This policy would have had a racist effect, even if it wasn't intended to be that way, by the government, and certainly by unfairly impacting on Australians of ethnic Indian origin. It's great to see the community stand up and say to the government that we're not prepared to put up with that, and see them reversing so quickly on this move to fine or even jail people coming to Australia from India. Now, we do need to get quarantine in place that can cope with more than 2% of people in quarantine being infected, and that does mean constructing new facilities and also making sure that they're close enough to intensive cares that can look after them, that are well resourced. So whilst expanding Howard Springs is welcome, it's only one part of the solution, and the news that other states are looking to construct air-gapped facilities is important. Why air-gapped? Well, that's because this is an aerosol spread disease, and the WHO has finally, that massive behemoth of international bureaucracy, finally this week come out and admitted that yes, aerosol transmission is very important. In fact, it's probably the most important way that COVID's transmitted. So we need to rethink again about how we prevent it, not worry so much about 1.5 metres, and be thinking about how well spaces are ventilated and how good the PPE is, because we certainly need to step up a level of PPE beyond the surgical mask for people who are going to be dealing with suspected and confirmed COVID cases. For the general community, surgical masks are okay, but they don't cut it in the workplace setting. Vaccination, we continue to see some issues around AstraZeneca, with the vaccine causing some low platelet setting thrombosis in some people, the blood clots, and we need to monitor that very carefully in Australia in the over 50s to see what that means, and hopefully very soon be giving Pfizer to the under 50 part of the community. But later in the year we may also be needing to give that to those who have decided that the AstraZeneca for them is not worth the risk at this point, given that there's very little COVID in our community and the risk of thrombosis seems to be about 1 in 100,000. So a lot to take in, but good to see the community emphasising the issue that it's best to keep this disease out. Our hearts are with all of those people overseas and all those people in Australia who have loved ones caught up in what's happening in places like India, many other countries suffering greatly. So please get on with vaccination if you're over 50 and you have an understanding of the risks and you want to proceed. And for the rest, I think get ready to be vaccinated when it's your turn, because that really is the only way we can get back to some sort of restricted international travel. Thanks again for your time.
That was Dr. Andrew Miller, and that's WP for this week. We'll be back again next time, but for now, it's back to you.
Thank you, Nelson. And here's Leo with what's coming up on 6 News.
Thanks guys, tonight on 6 News the countdown is on. Treasurer Josh Frydenberg set to unveil the 2021 federal budget next week. We'll be speaking live and exclusively to Shadow Treasurer Jim Chalmers about what we can expect in Labor's response. Plus, Beijing suspends all economic dialogue between China and Australia in a move analysts say is likely in retaliation over the decision to rip up Victoria's controversial Belt and Road initiative. An Australian permanent resident dies in India after contracting COVID just days after the federal government put in place a controversial travel ban, and now it's been confirmed that repatriation flights will start in less than a week's time, and a New Zealand man threatened with prosecution over his penis pothole drawings. You can see full details on those stories and plenty more by heading to our YouTube channel. Just search 6 News Australia to find us and see the latest headlines 24/7 at 6newsau.com. For now though guys, it's back to you.
Thanks, Leo. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wmnnews.com.au.
From Sarah and myself, we wish you good health, good night, see you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.